Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand. I have to have a nurse at all times now. I am not a well man. Thank you, Nurse Nikki. Nurse, the screens for the first 15 minutes will be available on X and YouTube. But ultimately, we want you to join us on Rumble and Rumble Premium for, frankly, an unbelievable conversation with my beloved friend, Bas Rutten. Bas Rutten, as you know, is a great mixed martial artist, entrepreneur and actor. He was the first ever Rogan guest to take Joe Rogan over 1 million views. What I thought I was dealing with when chatting to Bas Rutten is a kind of raw primordial force that could be directed towards any number of things, like a sort of a Niagara of energy that if it was able to flow towards chaos, it would, and if directed through the Heavenly Father and Lord, it would create all sorts of positive things. We talked to him about his O2 product, which is a device that helps you to breathe more deeply and better. We talk about martial arts, entrepreneurialism and faith. It's a fantastic conversation. Thanks so much for joining us. Without further dilly-dallying, here is my conversation with Bas Rutten. Bas, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Looking forward to this. Yeah.
One of the things that made me most excited to talk to you was that, in a sense, you midwifed Joe Rogan over the 1 million mark, as well as being a Catholic, as well as being, it sounds like, sort of inventor and innovator, early UFC warrior. But I'd like to start off firstly, of course, by extending my gratitude to you for joining us today and asking you about how you came to Christ.
Well, I was baptized, named after a badass saint, Saint Sebastian, the guy who got martyred twice. And but then when we were 12, around that age, I think my mom and dad, they didn't believe anymore. I saw a book where, one cell, and that turned into everything. And I guess that was it. And we didn't go to church anymore. So then many years later, after living a crazy life, non-Catholic life, I was with my buddy on the movie set. Well, first of all, things started happening to me. I got to go in that first. So let me tell the whole thing. So I took a lot of medication as a kid. I was very sick as a kid. I had rheumatic fever, spent 4 months in the hospital, had a leaking heart valve, just had an ablation done because of that. Like this whole thing, horrible skin disease. I was the leper in school, severe asthma attacks, like every 5 weeks a week in bed, unable to eat, have to do everything in bed. So it was a really tough life, and I took a lot of medication and I forgot a lot of things. But there's this one thing that always stuck out, and it was me looking at a tree in the classroom when I was 10 years old. I can smell the room, I can be there. It was so vivid, it was crazy. And the teacher tried to get a hold of me, and I know he was, and I heard the kids laughing, and then suddenly he got angry. And he says, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking at the tree. And he goes, what about the tree? I said, how did it get there? And he said, well, they planted it there, idiot. And I go, yeah, I understand that. But if you go to the tree before and the tree before, you go all the way back. Where do trees come from? And he just thought I was crazy. But that always stuck with me for somehow. I don't know why. Then I get this crazy life. Then I started drinking after I retired fighting, start doing drugs. You try to replace that feeling, I guess, from fighting in front of 15, 16,000 people with something else, which for me was drugs and alcohol. And although I'm always a happy guy, dancing with the kids and doing funny things, it's still stupid. I'm not a real man. I'm not a real husband. I'm not a real father. But at that time, I started getting attacked by a demon in the house. And it was very freaking scary. Some people say, oh, sleep paralysis. Well, sleep paralysis, you're paralyzed. I wasn't. I could move my arms, I could move my legs, but there was something sitting on my chest, it felt like. Something super heavy and pushing and pushing. And I tried to get it off of me with my arms, but it was almost like it was sitting here, so I couldn't really go around. Tried to throw my legs out of bed, tried to pull myself out, couldn't move it. The only way to get out of it was to just get mentally super aggressive, and then I would just shout a lot of profanity at the time, and then my wife would wake up, and again, I go, yeah, again, and I start challenging this ghost, whatever it was. I wanted to fight it. I said, well, don't wait till I'm asleep. Let's do it right now if you're so tough. So that kept going on. It happened like 5 times. One time I came home with the family. I just drove. I wasn't drinking. I just stepped into the house, and I felt there was somebody in the house. And I grabbed my phone, one of these old StarTech phones, on 911. I dialed. I gave it to my wife. I said, if you hear something, call. I said, but don't worry, I know where all the weapons are. And I thought this guy was in the house, and he was in the dining room area. There was a wall, dining room area here, and here was the open kitchen, which led in the back to the dining area as well. Now, in front of, there was a door from the dining area to the kitchen, and we had a really thick curtain hanging there instead of a door. And I thought that person was there. So I start making a lot of noise here. Hopefully he would do this, and then I make a U-turn, or he comes to me, I make a U-turn, and I'm going to grab the guy. So I come running around the corner, and the curtain flies up against the ceiling. So I kept running because somebody just ran through it, but there was nothing in the house. And that was really like, okay, that just happened. And it wasn't moving, it flew up against the ceiling. Okay, so now I started challenging that thing. I don't know why I did or knew at 3 a.m. was the time when the demonic activity is at its highest, right? 3 p.m. Jesus passed away, 3 a.m. But I did at 3 a.m. in the dining room under the chandelier because it was always cold there. It was really a weird place. And I start just challenging it. Let's do this and bring it down to my level, and let's see if we can fight this out. And then it stopped. But then I was still drinking. So I decided to take another fight after 7 years of not competing. My wife says, you're crazy. I go, no, I take the fight because there's no way I can drink and train. So this is going to stop me from drinking. And it worked out. Everything was good. We made the money. We went to a different house with a pool. And there the first night, in the morning, I asked my kids how the first night was. And one slept upstairs. And she said, well, it was good, but I had a visit from 2 boys. And I go, you mean spirits? And she goes, yes. I go, honey, you're not freaking out. And she goes, no, because they were very nice. One kept playing on the bed, but then finally I asked him to please stop, and he stopped. And I look at my wife, I go to the computer. Did ever something happen in my house? Well, in 2001, 4 kids, a girl, and I asked also what age? 16, 17, she said. 4 kids in the car went through our wall next to our home. 2 kids died, 2 boys, 16 and 17 years old. And she didn't know that. So now I knew, okay, something is going on here. Then I started filming a movie, Mall Cop 2. And my buddy, he said to me in a break, we had to go to the room to eat, to food, whatever it was. He says, hey, why don't you sit here listening to this guy because he's going to talk about how the world came together. I said, okay. So I'm sitting in there. If he would have said Jesus or he would have said God, I would have left. And I said, you'll see me in an hour. But he didn't say that. Let's see how the world came together. And I'm smoking a cigar, sitting at the cabana, at the Wynn Hotel, at the pool. And he starts talking. And the first thing that he says is the leaf fell from the tree. He says that leaf just reached its end destination. He says, let's backtrack that leaf. And he goes to the branch. And then he goes to the tree before. He goes to the tree before. And he starts backpedaling. And I'm sitting there and I go like, I know this story from somewhere, right? And the way he did that, and eventually there was Leo Severino. He's a very smart theologian. It was right away. I knew that we are a design. Now and then going from God to a designer, which is, that's a very small step. And boom, that was it. I was back into the faith.
I like the extraordinary synchronicity that the person that brought you to faith used an image that you were predisposed to respond to because your own inkling that there were ulterior realities had been piqued by your own contemplation of that tree as a boy. I liken it to the rich young man in the Gospel of, is it Matthew, who says to the Lord, what do I got to do? And he says, love God with all your heart. Oh, I do that already. Love your neighbor as you love thyself. I do that already. All right, then, leave everything you have and follow me. And like the young man sighed because he knew he wouldn't be able to do that. And I wonder if, when you talk about these supernatural encounters, Bas, it's clear to me that the world of the senses and the world of our human understanding is limited. It's clear to me that the natural leads almost organically to the supernatural. Indeed, I think of many of the saints, in particular St. Francis, that St. Francis experienced the supernatural through the natural. Like these demonic encounters that you're describing are pretty intense, but I got a real feeling that I could feel that you were telling the truth. And I've had other people, I've never had an encounter like that that's so explicit, vivid, lurid, and clear as you're describing. You can go to whichever arm. Like I've heard people talk about demonic experiences. I'm getting a NAD. I'm getting an NADIV, Bas. Do you ever get those?
I had one in Dubai like 6 weeks ago or so when I was there.
What do you think about it?
I felt great, but I was so tired the last year. I didn't know what was going on, and apparently I was in an AFib, so I had an atrial fibrillation for a year, and my heart has already a leaking heart valve from when I was a kid. When I was 4 months in the hospital, that was rheumatic fever, so it didn't know how to freaking do everything anymore, and I started getting more and more tired. So it didn't do anything at that time because it was just my heart. But then once I came back and had an ablation done like 4 or 5 weeks ago, it was like immediately back to life. Blood pressure down, heartbeat down, everything was good. And then I started actually feeling really good, which I do right now.
We're going to have a quick word from one of our partners now. We can't make this content without them. What if your coffee didn't just wake you up, but actually awakened you to new realms of consciousness? That's what's being promised by 1775 pea berry. Less than 5% of all beans can become pea berries. They're the Navy SEALs of coffee beans. Some of them just can't take Hell Week, which basically means your morning brew is rarer than a mainstream journalist telling the truth. Jake Tapper, you must have seen that Joe Biden was old. He was obviously old. It's grown high in the Bolivian mountains where the air is thin, the vibes are thick, and the beans basically whisper ancient truths to the winds. No acidic afterburn, no synthetic weirdness. This coffee doesn't leave you hungover in a feather boa or speaking fluent nonsense. Just bold, smooth, consciousness-activating coffee with clean energy and antioxidants so potent I drank it and remembered 3 of my past lives. Go to 1775coffee.com, use the code BRAND and get 15% off. You had a pretty extraordinary life there, ill health that you described as a child, going on to confront physical threat and live in combat in the way that you've described. It seems that you've been chosen to tell a very, very particular story and to demonstrate some very, very unusual ideas. And like I was saying about the demonic thing there, sometimes when you said that about like feeling the weight on your chest, sometimes that's where I feel it most. Like I feel like I'm encountering something there. I recently went back to the UK where I have some tribulations that seem to me somehow demonic. And when I consider Ephesians and the dark power and the dark authority, I feel like that plays out for sure in human institutions through human power. And I sense that the way that the evil one has taken control of the world, the authority that he says in scripture that he has in his, when tempting our Lord, I feel that power has captured media, a lot of government. The normalization of evil is like happening sort of at scale in our culture. Yeah, do what you've got to do, mate. Do what you've got to do. And it's very interesting to me to discuss with you a voyage and a journey and a walk that's included sort of frailty and vulnerability as a child that I really strongly identify with, trouble with addiction that I strongly identify with. And I wonder if you agree with me that addiction is I believe, and so do the sort of people that came up with the 12-step program that I'm able one day at a time to use to stay clean and free, that addiction is an attempt to sanctify and make spiritual the material, that our thirst for God and our hunger for the holy is so strong that you have to have God, and that you find one by one that the false idols can never give it to you. Sex can't give it to you. Fame can't give it to you. Money can't give it to you. So in the end, you have to introduce chemicals which can at least alter your state. Do you recognize that your own addiction and alcoholism had a spiritual component? Do you agree with that diagnosis, that you were trying to do a spiritual job for yourself?
I love that. But at that time it was like pushing love away or pushing bad feelings. It was like I was this guy who always felt good, always glass half full, always happy, always. And I think after fighting, it left. I don't know. Something happened that I couldn't fight anymore, and it really left a hole. I start to try to fill that, but it's pleasure. So to me, I see it's more now when I look back over the whole path. Yes, I know this is God. I mean, from the get-go, giving my diseases, I become a fighter. I start beating bullies up, and then slowly but surely, now I'm talking to you. You see, so I 100% I believe that is God. But in the beginning, I think that I got attacked a lot by the devil, with God allowing it, because of course for him, and I always tell people this is the craziest thing, for him, this whole existence, whatever he did, everything is one act for him. There's no time. So for him, the whole creation, what he did, it's still going. He never was, he never will be, he is, so he knew automatically, well, he knows automatically, you see, so we think like that, but he doesn't think like that since he's time outside time and space. So he allowed all that to do. It's like a guy finds a wallet and he thinks, hallelujah, I got it. Oh, I want to buy a new TV, accept the money for the TV. And then he says, he praises God, but that's the devil. But it's God allowing it to happen just to see what he's going to do with it. Does he take the right course, the wrong course? Put him on the path. And slowly but surely, because I believe everybody has like a Catholic conscience, at least a Christian conscience. We know what is right and what is wrong, right? And we know what ultimately is the best for us. So he knows that is wrong. The problem with going wrong, once you go too many times wrong, that wrong becomes so easy to do. That's addiction, right? It's addiction, but it's also everything in your mind. So then you keep doing it. And then the way to get out of it is by most of the time a hard fall, rock bottom. That's what they say, with drinking and drugs, falling so hard that you understand that this is the only way to get out of it. But that could always, it's set up by the devil, but it's allowed by God because he knows eventually that you will get out of it.
Yeah. Yes, I understand the perfect will and permissive will, and I can see that I failed a lot of tests. Like I've so many times returned to false idolatry and self-worship. Can you see in retrospect the nature of those tests in your own life? What was the equivalent of being given a wallet? Was it that you have a capacity for strategy, like when you're chasing a demon in a U-bend around your kitchen? Have you got a capacity for combat? What is it that you think was your test that initially may have played out for ill that ultimately God can use?
I thought I had just the more stupid stuff I did, the better I got with whatever I was doing. So I was almost like, why would I stop? I'm completely drunk. They throw me in the thing. I have in the room. I wake up in the morning in my clothes and I have to do a show that night. Not fighting, but like commentating. Never messed up. I always knew what I was doing. So every time when I was never put in a situation that I go, okay, this is payback from what I did last night or what I did last week. I always sailed through everything. I had car accidents that you cannot believe, flying over a crash barrier, no seat belts, my body flies through the car, no roof. Somehow we don't go out, missing every tree on the way back, on the way down. Down is water, upside down in the water. I don't know how deep the water is. I have to kick the windows out. My body is knocked out. I have to drag him out. Now, thankfully, it wasn't that deep. But all these, and I have a scratch. I have nothing. He had his whole skull open, need to be stitched up everywhere. I had zero. I knocked out a toilet with my head because I was drunk and on Valium. But I had to shower in a hotel, so I get out and now the pill kicks in. I slip backwards. I hit my head on the rim. How is this possible that I completely destroyed the whole the toilet? And then the whole floor started floating. I just kicked some curtains in it or whatever I found. I put it on a bed sheet and I went to sleep. And then the next day I woke up. I go, like, did I dream this? This is weird. And I'm going to the restroom and I'm sitting down because I always want to sit if I pee because otherwise I'm all over the place. I don't want to hit the light switch yet. And I go, man, that was a weird dream. But the toilet is here and I hit the light switch and I see bloody handprints everywhere. And I go, what the heck is going on? And I had nothing. I had a scratch on the back of my head. And those things, it's impossible. You take a sledgehammer, you can almost not do it. But somehow it found a weak spot in that rim that made that thing explode instead of breaking my skull. You see, so all these moments that I start thinking about that were so crazy that I survived, now I know he simply had a hand in that. So, but at the time, I thought, hey, the crazier I am, nothing is happening. It's only getting better. Let's just keep on going crazy. I needed a slap in the face. That's what I needed. A very hard slap in the face. And I think it started to come up. And then suddenly when Leo started talking about that leaf fell from the tree, it started coming back. And once I realized, the first thing that I met was Matthew 7:3-5, right? Why do you try to remove the splinter from your brother's eye with a wooden beam in your own eye? Hypocrite. Why don't you remove first the wooden beam so you can see clearly, and then you can remove the splinter? And I go like, man, that's me. That's me. I'm telling everybody how to stop drinking while I'm drinking. I'm telling everybody how to stop doing drugs, but I was doing it myself. And that really put it on me. I go like, my God, I'm a douche. I'm a complete douche. And then I started disconnecting from things. Get rid of the freaking Porsche. Get rid of these watches. Get rid of this. Get rid of that. I gave it to my friends. I go, I don't want it anymore. I just want, just get a normal car. Why would I need to drive around and all that stuff? It's not needed. And once I start doing, it started feeling better. First of all, I lost a lot of jobs because I think the evil one wasn't happy and he went fully after me. I lost 150,000 followers. Everybody thought I was crazy. Everything went down, down, down. Lost the job. So suddenly now it's scary because I didn't have a lot of work. This is in 2014. People don't realize that. But then suddenly when I just stuck with it, I started doing a rosary every day and the angels every day, divine mercy every day. And I started going and an examination of conscience in the evening and going over the day. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? How can I make things better? What didn't I do but should have done? Like all these things, and it started helping me. And suddenly, boof, everything started gaining. And now I got the good fans. Now I got the guys. It's weird. We live in a world that when you try to be a better person, people try to hate you for it, right? It's amazing. I mean, I just want to do what Jesus does. Try to love thy neighbor as thyself, right? Two of the greatest commandments he gave, love God with everything you got. But if you're atheist, leave that. But number two, treat thy neighbor as thyself. And we all know it, but nobody does it. And all with our Father, we say the same thing. As we forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive others who trespass against us. Who does that? I mean, not a lot of people forgive all the others. Nay, we want to be forgiven. It's all me, 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 me. And once I realized that, and that pride is in the little things, it's not in boasting and that. That's an easy one to fix. But it's like holding the door open for somebody and he doesn't say thank you and you get angry, aggravated. That's pride. Why would you do it because it's the right thing to do. You don't do it for a thank you. And once I start seeing those little tiny things, I go, man, I got a lot of clean up to do. So I started cleaning, and now it's everything became better. It was easier to stop the drugs, to stop the alcohol, because now I saw what a real man is, which is a guy who doesn't do everything because now he is controlled. Whatever overcomes a man to that, he is enslaved, right? That's what the Bible says. I didn't want to be the slave anymore. I want to be in control. Okay, let's not drink that anymore. And I'm not the guy who can say 2 drinks, I'm going to stop. And I know I'm not that guy. So I simply don't drink. And I simply don't do drugs. But you see, then you realize the guy who's in complete control of everything in his life, that's a man. And I want to be a man. That's the only thing I want to be.
I like the scripture, seek thee first the kingdom of God. And I feel that all of our interactions, if they can be directed primarily towards God rather than anything else, then opening a door and being spurned or a failed business venture or any challenges are secondary. I heard a Catholic priest, Thomas Merton, like relatively contemporary Catholic writer, say that sacrifice need not include suffering, that even though the primary image of sacrifice is obviously Christ on the cross and it is an image of suffering, but that the point of sacrifice is to acknowledge that there is another realm, a primary realm, the realm of God, the realm of the Father. And the reason that involves suffering often is because we're attached to our body, or we're attached to our money, or we're attached to our food, or we're attached to sex or identity or whatever it is. But the sacrifice needn't include suffering. If you were not attached, if you had perfect non-attachment, then and that's why I need Christ, because I know that Christ was tempted by the devil. I know that Christ suffered. I did the Stations of the Cross prayer today, in fact, in preparation for this interview with you. And like Christ, he falls down 3 times, has these human interactions, weeps with his mother. And I feel that I'm a very devout man, Bas. Like, I worship a lot. I worship. Like, when I was like worshiping drugs, I loved taking drugs. And when I was worshiping sex, I loved having sex. I was very, very, very committed to it. And sometimes, Bas, I can feel the demon or the phantom or the shadow of it. Like, I feel it in the material world. For me, I'm one of them that's been chosen out of the world, and what I mean by that is I can't be in the world. I can't do it. If I start dedicating myself to the world, start caring about my success at work or whether I've got enough money, it starts with one thread, but before I know it, I'm fully in. I'm fully in, fully caring.
Yep.
If so I just can't do it, man. And I think that you might be like that. I think you might be sounds to me like you're an extremist, but that when you devote that to something focused and targeted, like becoming a fighter, which is a pretty much no place to hide, serious questions asked environment, you're able to succeed. How do you regard that success through the lens of a saved man of God? How do you look back at even the things in your life that were apparently and evidently successful, victorious, glorious?
Yeah, well, it's exactly like you said. We are wired a different way. We are wired like we want everything in one time. If one is good, 10 is better. That is really bad for all the vices out there, but it's really good if you want something to achieve. And that's what I had in fighting. And for me, it was like one goal, I'm going to get that. I'm going to train harder than everybody. If 10 rounds is good, 15 is better. So I use it for the positive and not realizing that once I stopped. And although I should have known a little bit, because after a fight, I will be 3 days gone. And my wife wouldn't know where I am. I said, I'll be right back in like 2 or 3 days. I will see when I'm back. And then we'll come back because in Japan, I fought a lot. Yeah, like the first year, I fought 8 fights. The second year, I fought 9 fights. So we were constantly training, staying in shape. But you go 2 days, 3 days, completely crazy. You're completely gone. Then you come back, take a day rest, and then you started training again. But that also went full power. So I should have seen it coming that once I take the training away, it's going to be a problem later on. But once you come to God and you realize and you live by those principles, you realize, I wish that I would have known this when I was freaking 20 years old. Somebody would have come to me, hammered some sense into me. But then again, I was 20. Would I have listened? But I think it gets a special person who I'd really admire. And he would simply say, hey, this is the deal. You're not a man if you can't control it. Like really being like the tough guy. We always want to be the tough guy. You want to be a military guy? Well, you can't do anything of that. Because what if something happens? What if somebody comes in the house? You have to protect your mom and your dad. You see, like that, he should have talked to me. But I wasn't. Nobody ever talked to me like that because I came from a family where they simply didn't believe. I wish constantly I go back, if I could go back to 2000, just 2000, when the kids were very tiny still, and then there from that moment on, so I have at least the fighting behind me because, man, that was a crazy path. Learn from all these crazy mistakes, and then I should have jumped back into the church. But it never happened. Somehow God knew that, well, in 2014 would be a better day for me. And I jumped back. And listen, it really worked. When I came back, my wife started laughing because she knows me. Normally, when I see something new, it's for 6 weeks, I go full in and I lose interest. But this one, it stayed. And then suddenly I asked her, I said, hey, listen, I want to marry again. Now, we already married twice. One for the green card, we came in, we had to be a family before applying so that we can all get the green card. The second was the big wedding that I promised her. But now I wanted to marry for the church. And she goes, okay. I don't even know if she really said something, but the next day I could get a hold of her. And then finally she calls me back. I go, hey, where were you? She goes, I was at Mass. And I go, you were at Mass? He go, why? He says, well, you want to get married for the church, right? I say, yeah. And she said, well, I did my confirmation. No, I was baptized, but I didn't do my confirmation. Just signed up. I went to Mass and signed up for RCIA classes. I mean, she saw me change within a year. And immediately when I said I want to marry her, the next day she went to Mass and she signed up for RCIA classes. You see, so she just saw what a person I was becoming. And she wanted that. She wanted to jump on it. So the proof is in the pudding. It's just, doing it. Everything changes and everything becomes better. That's the thing, the problem right now. Everybody's looking for that dopamine the whole time, and we need to go with the serotonin. The ketones are like just feeling good, but we want those peaks. But those peaks, every time you need more of it, whatever it is that gives you that peak in order to get that same feeling. How many times did you not tell your friends? And I said, that first time you did cocaine, you never get that same experience again, right? But that's with every vice, and that's why the world is so out of control, because we all want to be free. But you shouldn't be free, because then there's no meaning. Nobody wants to work anymore. What if you become a champion with no training? What would that mean? It doesn't mean anything. There needs to be hardship, And once you realize that, and I realized at a very late age, then you go, my God, I've been so stupid my entire life. Why didn't I do this all the way back? How cool would it be to be a fighter, to never use profanity, to have no tattoos, and just destroy everybody and spreading the word of God? I mean, that would have been a really cool thing to do. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, I don't think God is okay with fighting, but I think that's a dumb that's a dumb statement. I think he is okay with it, as long as both fighters sign up for it in order to do it to have a better life. Like I say, violence is when one of the guys doesn't want to fight. I think that's violence. But I think when you both sign up to support your families, and for people, it always looks like it's so violent because it's in a cage, right? And you put animals in a cage, you put prisoners in a cage, but it's actually there for your safety. And once you go through all the rules and what you can and cannot do, then you realize it's really not that dangerous. But there's way less death, like way less. I think we have maybe 3 deaths since mixed martial arts started. And why is that? Because we don't have an 8 count. Taking the 8 count away, it's a big thing. If I mount somebody and I start hitting him and he doesn't intelligently defend himself, before I connect through, the referee's probably going to pull me off. Because eventually he knows it's going to happen. So it's much safer for the fighters, but people don't know that. They see the blood with the heartbeat of 150 pumping out, and it looks all bad, and it's in the cage, but they don't see the sport of it, and they don't know what we feel towards each other. You don't hate that guy. What you see is 90% fake. Sometimes it's real, but it's very rare. But the rest, these guys, there's such a camaraderie among fighters. People have no idea how that is. And they're really good guys too. All the top guys, you won't see them fight on the street because they don't need to prove themselves. Plus, they don't want to go to jail. They want to make money in real fighting, you see? So, yeah, it's everything is done now, I know, for a reason. The whole path. I'm actually writing my story, and it's insanity. There's some things that I go like, oof, I don't know if I'm going to have to put that in there. I don't want to inspire other kids to do crazy stuff. So I'm going to have to filter a lot out. But yeah, if I really go back to all the things that happened, boom, here we are. We're talking. That's so crazy.
We can't stream the rest of this content on YouTube. It's simply too controversial. If you want to join us for the rest of the conversation, talking about the Olympics and a brilliant system for changing the way you breathe and therefore live, click the link in the description. Join us over on Rumble. And if you haven't got Rumble Premium yet, get Rumble Premium now. I don't think you should filter anything out. I think you should put it all in and then do a pass on it. Like do a pass after you've put it in and write it from the perspective, like you're writing it as the man that you are now. So there you Awakening Wonders. Welcome to Stay Free with Russell Brand. We've got a very special interview today with Lindy Lee, formerly Democrat, fundraiser and advocate and media personality. It's a brilliant conversation to have with someone who was so devoted to the left and now is an apostate. She has turned away from the left and she knows where the bodies are buried. It's a brilliant conversation. If you're joining us from Timcast, welcome. Get on over here. If you're from Mug Club, get on over here. We love you. Remember, we stream Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. Tomorrow's our watch along. We're looking at Tommy Robinson's documentary and Tommy will be coming on as a guest in the next few weeks. I'm not wearing a watch. I'm just looking at Jesus. Join us for that. This is a brilliant conversation. Let me tell you a little bit about Lindy Lee, for those of you that don't know. Lindy Lee is an American political commentator, campaign advisor, and former Democratic Party leader who now identifies, as conservative. She previously served as the women's co-chair and Mid-Atlantic regional chair of the Democratic National Committee and worked on Asian American outreach for the Biden 2020 campaign. Once a vocal defender of the Biden administration, she became a fierce critic of the Democratic Party following the 2024 election. She's worked with NBC, MSNBC, and Fox, and she's run for Congress. This is a brilliant conversation. You are going to love it. If you're watching this on X or YouTube, make your way over to Rumble. And if you don't have Rumble Premium yet, get Rumble Premium. You get additional content, not just from me, but from Tim Poole and from Stephen Crowder and from Glenn Greenwald and all of the other Rumble free speech advocates. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Lindy Lee. It goes in some surprising places. There's some good chemistry. There's Christian music at the end. Stay with it. See you in a minute. Lindy, thank you so much for joining me for Stay Free with Russell Brand.
Russell, it's such an honor to join you. Thank you for having me.
Is that Philadelphia in the background?
It is. That's a William Penn statue. I am in the clouds above Philadelphia.
It's really beautiful.
I've been here practically all my life.
Wow.
Oh, actually, I'm from Sheffield, England. I wanted to tell you that. I'm from the United Kingdom.
You're a Yorkshire woman. When were you in Sheffield
but
last?
I left when I was 4 or 5. So, but I spent my first years of my life there. Yeah.
I'm trying to detect a Yorkshire accent and I couldn't hear it. I love that place. I love Sheffield. That most people, if they're familiar with Sheffield at all, it'll be because of maybe the actor Sean Bean or the film The Full Monty or Sheffield's famous football teams, United and Wednesday. Do you ever go back to Sheffield?
Unfortunately, no, but I'm such an Anglophile. Everything British, I absolutely love. You guys are the best. I think you're the best people on earth.
Well, thank you. I heard recently a brilliant theory that the British could be one of the lost tribes of Israel, that there are prophecies that point towards it. Certainly politically, though, our country, the United Kingdom, is going through some transformations and some transitions that are, of course, comparable to what's happening in the United States, even though there is a distinct trajectory. Lindy, what I mean by that is that Britain is having a kind of moment of nationalism, that Britain is having a moment of, I would say, a kind of crisis of confidence in the institutions of governance. I would say that when it comes to a renewed cynicism about institutions of media, that's by virtue of the fact that independent media is a global phenomenon. That's it, the subsequent cynicism about centralized legacy media is similarly global. One of the reasons I was most excited to speak with you is because you were such a vocal supporter and significant supporter, as well as advocate and indeed potentially even Congress member for the Democrat Party. And now you actually disavow them, and I wonder where you stand politically now, particularly even with recent conversations in the space that both you and I now occupy, where the fracture that's appeared between Donald Trump and Elon Musk, the conversations around Thomas Massey, the emergence of Mamdani, the continuing controversy around AOC suggests that something new is being born, even beyond
Absolutely.
MAGA, Maha, and the resurgence of right-wing politics. What do you think about these?
Totally right.
Thank you. What do you think about the sort of these new categories that are emerging, and what are your sort of let's sketch out an outline of what you think is coming in the next few years politically in your country?
Russell, I think your analysis is spot on. I think there's a lot of discontent, especially in the last couple of weeks when President Trump decided to go into Iran. A lot of people are upset. A lot of people voted for him because they didn't want more wars. They didn't want forever wars, regime change wars. And I actually wasn't really keen on getting into Iran, but now that we're there, I think it was the best that could have been hoped for. The way that it was handled, this is the best case scenario, because when Iran retaliated, it was very symbolic. They did the least possible damage. They literally telegraphed to us the day before what they were going to do. So the damage was actually quite minimal. So who knows? If Trump can pull this off, and if he can establish peace in between Israel and the Palestinians, he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. But it's a huge if. We'll see what happens. But you're totally right that there's a lot of discontent, because this would, if we had escalated this war in something, and if this had deteriorated, this would have been a third war in the Middle East in the past 20 some years, which would have signified that Americans learned nothing from our catastrophic mistakes in the last couple of decades. But fingers crossed, and we'll never get there. I don't know. We'll see what happens in the next couple of days. I think it's going to be really critical.
What for a minute seemed like a very sort of cohesive political movement around MAGA. I mean, given the prominent figures that around which the movement coalesced: Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy, J.D. Vance, but most notably, and obviously Trump himself, the sort of epitome and figurehead of rising populism, a movement that's really changing politics everywhere, not just in your country. What I am fascinated by is now there's, I would say, whether it's on the subject of migration, as you've already touched upon, the subject of war, or the subject of the deficit, there are fissures and fractures emerging. Now, Elon Musk this just sort of see this landscape changes so rapidly and radically, Lindy. Even in 24 hours, what we're talking about now might have changed. But Elon Musk is talking about supporting opponents of the big beautiful bill in primaries. Trump is suggesting and threatening even candidates and sort of politicians such as Thomas Massey. I wonder if you think that Elon Musk's talk of a third political party in America is just rhetoric, or is it something that America should consider? Is in fact the ending of these categories of left and right a precursor to the emergence of new political movements?
Yeah, I understand Elon's frustration. I actually sympathize a lot with what he's saying, because this bill does add $3 trillion to $33 trillion of debt. It's completely unsustainable, and my generation, our generation, will be paying for that. It's completely untenable. We spend $1 trillion a year just paying off our interest alone. So this is not a sustainable situation at all. But I do want to say that the two parties are so deeply entrenched. So I don't see the two-party system going away anytime soon, despite the moribund nature and the dilapidated nature of the Democratic Party. It's just so incredibly hard to form a third party. I mean, all you have to do is look at Andrew Yang. Remember, he made a huge stink about starting the Forward Party, but where did that go? Every day he slips into more irrelevance. I don't mean any disrespect. I'm just describing it objectively. Like, nobody's really listening to him, right? So I understand where Elon is coming from, but I think a lot of his motivation, in addition to being financial, is also personal. It's hard to leave the highest echelons of power. I get it. And I think he feels a little bit ostracized. But it doesn't, no one can deny the immense frustration that the grassroots feel about additional wars in the Middle East, additional spending. People like Thomas Massey, we can disagree with him on certain matters, but no one can deny that this is a man who sticks by his principles, I believe.
We're going to pause the interview for a quick word from one of our partners. Here's a message from them now. Why are you drinking stinking, jaded, lukewarm, dirty, filthy grey coffee beans when you could be having vibrant, revolutionary coffee like this one? It's an elixir of pure innocence. It's a glorious and awakening drink. Pea berries are the outliers, the lone wolves, the beans that grow solo on the branch. No twins, no compromise, no hangers-on, no hemorrhoids. Just one dense, round, flavour-packed powerhouse that tastes like it's been preparing for this cup its entire life. It's grown high in the Bolivian mountains where the air is thin, the vibes are thick, and the beans basically whisper ancient truths to the winds. No acidic afterburn, no synthetic weirdness. This coffee doesn't leave you hungover in a feather boa or speaking fluent nonsense. Just bold, smooth, consciousness-activating coffee with clean energy and antioxidants so potent I drank it and remembered 3 of my past lives. Go to 1775coffee.com, use the code BRAND and get 15% off. Peaberry Wonder, Hallucinations, Glory, Psychedelic Wonder, all available here. Use the link, get the discount, get the free shipping, benefit from an awakening bean. You lunatic, you. Well, the emergence of Trump, 10 years ago, or that is certainly the descent down the gold escalator, an ascent into the public imagination, and ultimately into an almost unique position of personal power, I feel like represented a new political epoch. And many people might contest, Lindy, that the Republican Party was completely reformed in Trump's image, and the party conference prior to his current tenure seemed to be a purge of old Republican figures, an end of the old guard, and a kind of, in a sense, an ascendancy of what began as the Tea Party movement in, I don't know, around 08 or whenever that was, into this new MAGA and somewhat Maha movement. So if Trump can completely reconfigure the Republican Party, even though we still have an entrenched two-party political system, the landscape of American politics is altered. Do you think that it is a radical transformation, that Trump is a radically different political figure, or do you imagine that the same financial and institutional interests that have always run America can continue to exert monumental and influence even with someone as individualistic, but personally potent as Donald Trump?
That's such a good question. It reminds me of the Silicon Valley mantra, move fast and break things. And that's kind of what Donald Trump is doing right now. If anyone can shake up Washington and completely rejigger, completely revolutionize politics, it's Donald Trump. I've never seen anything like it. I've also, I guess, admittedly haven't been on Earth that long, but it's just astounding how much he has revolutionized our institutions, our way of normally doing things, our presidential norms. And I actually think it's a good thing. What he did to USAID, for instance, was absolutely necessary. Why are we funneling billions of dollars around the world for countries that don't even treat us very well? Why are we funding transgender operas overseas? Why does it help? Tell me, well, whose interest does that serve? It goes into the pockets of liberal organizations here in America. And it also speaks to the criticisms that I've been offering against the Democratic Party. These deep-pocketed people who move from campaign to campaign, they make tens of millions of dollars. They pocket our taxpayer funds. They pocket the money of the hard-earned money of Americans around the country. And that is why the core of the Democratic Party is so rotten. And it goes back to your question. We needed somebody like Trump to essentially turn over the tables in the temple and start over. And I'm really happy to see that they're trying to implement some of the Doge cuts because it's absolutely not unnecessary. We should not be spending money like a drunken sailor.
Prior to your vocal condemnation of the Democrats, you were fundraising for the Democrats and supporting them vocally and publicly. How long before you publicly denounced the Democrats and began your support of Trump and the Republicans in this current form and incarnation were you having doubts about, for example, Kamala Harris's candidacy, Biden's cognitive decline, and the party's motivation more generally? What did you think about Hillary Clinton? What did you think about Bernie Sanders? What did you think about AOC?
God. Oh my God.
What was the decline and what was your apostasy, should we call it? When did
That's
it
a great
begin?
word. My fall from grace, so to speak. I've been warring against the leftist faction, against the woke faction of the Democratic Party for 6 years. Actually, that's kind of my claim to fame in American politics. I went to war with the Bernie Bros. The Chinese communist regime murdered my great-grandfather in cold blood. So I have an extreme allergy and aversion to anything to do with Marxist ideology. And that's everything that Bernie Sanders represented for me. So I went to war with the leftist faction about 5-6 years ago and got tarred and feathered for that. And that was my first brush with the hyenas of the Democratic Party. And ever since then, I think it's just been a matter of time. But the Biden presidency was a whole nother beast because it was a complete lie. And unfortunately, Russell, I got to be honest with you, I believed it for a number of years. It took me a while to realize, oh my God, they're lying to us. They lied to us about the Hunter Biden situation. They told us it was a Russian conspiracy. Unfortunately, I believed it. Because when you have NBC News and the American intelligence community telling you that something is true, I tended to believe them. I now understand it's a mistake. But as a 20-something, I believe them. And I think it took one lie unraveling to make me think, oh, if they're lying about Hunter Biden's laptop, maybe they're lying about Biden's cognitive state, which I actually saw firsthand. I didn't really need much to realize that they're lying about that, but other things as well. Maybe they were lying about the billions that I helped to raise for Kamala Harris. And so it's kind of like a domino effect. They lost my credit. They lost my trust on one thing, which made me question everything else. And Russell, it's been about 8 months since I first asked for accountability on the billions that I raised. It's been total crickets. No one has said anything. No one has answered my questions about why we spent millions on Beyonce, Cardi B, what's her name? The one who dances like a blank on stage. Megan Thee Stallion.
The Stallion.
Yeah, that woman. Why did we spend hard-earned money on that, on celebrity endorsements, rather than on bread and butter issues, rather than on showing that we care about the American people? But frankly, by that point, I'd already given up. Russell, exactly a year ago, I went to Fox News basically as a cry for help. I reached out to somebody there, trying to tell the truth. And I remember getting a call from somebody in the Biden White House saying, "You're the president's most loyal supporter. We know you're going to stay loyal." I didn't stay loyal, quote unquote. I stayed loyal to the American people. And I told the truth about the state of his cognitive fitness, which isn't very good. But this is the type of people they are. They shoved a conspiracy, a lie, a deception down the throats of the American people, all in the service of Orange Man bad.
Do you think, Lindy, that social democracy is inclined towards a kind of tyranny over time and therefore amplify the woke cultural aspect of their doctrine over economic policy to mask the fact that really what's happening over time is that in order to increase authority, they're amplifying concern? The clearest and best example of that for, our audience would be the period of the COVID pandemic, where under the auspices of the preservation and protection of human life, authority was increased, censorship increased, social control increased, mandating in some cases and near mandating of medications increased. And during that period, we got to see that what was posing as a social democratic government, whether that was in the form of, Trump, who was obviously in office at the beginning of the pandemic period, or the Biden administration during the majority of the pandemic period, there's a kind of tendency towards authoritarianism that gets masked with the kind of false choices that people are offered in bipartisan democracies. Do you think, therefore, Lindy, that this amount of deception that you've observed in what sounds to me like you're describing as a personal political awakening, where you began to see the Democrat Party really as a kind of type of theatre, a deceptive machine, a deceptive and manipulative machine? Do you think, Lindy, that we might be hopefully moving towards a period where we have to acknowledge that social democracies themselves, as I said at the beginning of this rather long question, incline towards hegemony and tyranny? And if that is the case, then perhaps what we're seeing now in this latest spate of controversies and conflict early in the Trump administration, whether it's with Thomas Massey or Elon Musk or some of the other, the controversy around the Iran war we started off talking about, is actually the kind of what do I want to say? The kind of collapse of not only our faith in these systems, but the collapse of these systems themselves, artificially Viagra'd for a few years by the priapism of Donald Trump, who's like a sort of a very mobile and potent individual. But nevertheless, the problems of Western democracy and the collapse of Western democracy go beyond this left-right argument and sort of problems of deep decline.
Wow. Wait, first of all, I could listen to you talk all day.
Thanks.
It's kind of like music to my ears. I could literally listen to your British accent all day long. And you used my favorite word, hegemony. I just want to pause and praise you for a sec for that. Also, did you use Viagra as a verb?
Yeah.
If you did, that was amazing.
I've never done that before. That was the first time I've ever done that. Thank you.
Truly brilliant. The brill, as you guys would say. I have to give you credit for that. You are spot on about the underlying sickness of our political system. It's just, oh man, I just feel like the whole thing is just, we are living under at least under a democratic leadership, we were living under the tyranny of trans LGBTQI plus, and every year there would be additional letter. If you noticed, every single year they would tack on some other color to their flag or some other letter to their acronym, and it would just get more ridiculous. And Russell, I don't know if you realize this, they didn't consider me American. This party of diversity, they didn't think I was American. Like, for them, I was AANHPI. That is how they labeled me when I was in the party. And what does that stand for? You have no idea, right? Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander. I'm from the freaking United Kingdom. Tell me why they force this down my throat. They are so big on identity politics, and I think that's almost the essence of their disease. They celebrate diversity, but in so doing, they were actually sowing division in our republic. And it's just so toxic. And by the way, the people who are most racist towards me right now aren't the Republicans, the vast majority of whom have been incredibly warm and welcoming towards me. The people who are now calling me a Chinese spy, by the way, the Chinese government, as I mentioned, killed my great-grandfather. You think I'm going to be spying for them? Those fucking douchebags? Am I allowed to curse on here? But you, like, honestly, the Democrats are now saying we should deport her to China. I'm an American citizen, thank you very much. Where are you going to deport me to? Philadelphia, my home? So something's got to change, because right now, guess what? The Democratic Party is at a 19% approval rating. And as you alluded to, there's also dissension within the ranks, within the MAGA ranks. But I think, once Trump gets the trade deals figured out, apparently there are a number of trade deals down the pipeline. As soon as he irons out the Iran-Israel situation, the Israel-Gaza situation, as soon as interest rates come down, I think his momentum is going to be hard to stop going into the midterms. I actually already committed to fundraise for him for free, because it is so pivotal that we don't go back. We cannot go back to the progressive tyranny that we saw under the Biden administration.
If you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description. You're going to love the rest of this conversation between Lindy and I. We talk about communism, we talk about Christianity, and we talk about the necessity for new emergent political forces. Click the link in the description. Join us over there. I reckon that probably there will be a transformation of the Democrat Party comparable to the transformation of the Republican Party under Trump. It's pretty clear, it seemed at least, that the Republican Party was grooming and preparing Jeb